Hello, everyone, and let's welcome Brennan Lee Mulligan to Dragon Talk.
Yay!
Woo! Very exciting.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I can't believe it. Thank you guys so much for having me on your show. This is so cool.
Thanks for being here.
Very exciting. You are the Dungeon Master for Dimension 20.
Yes. Dimension 20, actual play show, College Humor's home actual play game. We are in the middle of releasing a new side quest right now called Tiny Heist with the McElroys. We have Dimension 20 live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific.
Wait, no, can you give all of your things you want to do like faster? You're not doing it fast enough.
Faster. Okay. Tiny Heist coming out on Thursdays with the McElroys and Jess Ross and Lily Dew playing, a College Humor alumni. We have the live. There's so much.
Thank you very much.
My little Unsleeping City, which is our recent main cast season. Repping
T-shirts, yes.
How about it, gang?
That's so exciting. All that stuff. You've been playing a Dungeon Master for a really long time, though. Like this is like the pinnacle. This is like the top. But you started, what's that Drake song? You started at the bottom.
Started from the, I would say the middle to bottom. It's less dramatic, but yeah, started at near the middle is probably more accurate. But yeah, I've been playing D&D for 22 years. I've been playing since I was 10 years old. And if you had told, I got my friends together when I was itty bitty, and for my entire teenage years would play. I had a full game Saturday and a full game Sunday, and would play twice a week, every weekend, for years and years and years. And if you had told youngster Brennan, like, hey, in some amount of decades you will be doing this for a living, young Brennan would probably have been forced to say, you're being really mean to say something.
That's not a job.
That's not a job. How could I do that? Yeah, it's fully, Dimension 20 is fully a dream come true to turn this amazing game into a livelihood. It's a source of good fortune for which I will never be able to be grateful.
So how did it come? Sorry.
No, you do it.
Maybe it's the same question.
It was.
How did it come about? Was it something that you had pitched?
So basically the story, I've been playing D&D nonstop since I was a kid, right? And at a certain point, the creativity and skills that I started to learn playing D&D as a kid started to be applied to other stuff. I was I was a writer for many years, one of the lead story writers for a LARPing summer camp called the Wayfinder Experience.
Amazing.
Later in my 20s, I started performing and teaching at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which is an improv and sketch comedy theater, doing improv there. And, taking these skills that I learned from D&D and applying them in other places. And eventually that UCB thread led to being employed at College Humor, right at a time when College Humor was looking to vastly accelerate the amount of content they were creating for this new streaming service called Dropout. And, right when I got hired as a cast member, they were basically like, pitch any kind of show you want to make. And, being the biggest D&D nerd in the world, I, of course, had listened to Adventure Zone, and I was watching Critical Role, and there were so many great actual play things out there. And I was like, well, if we have all these comedians and we want to try to do a funny actual play, I started writing a treatment for it. And halfway through writing a treatment for what that show would look like, I got called by Adam Frucci, our, at the time, head of development, into his office. And he was like, hey, sorry to interrupt you while you're writing. How do you feel about doing an actual play show? And I was like, oh, look, turn my computer around. I'm writing it right now. I'm doing it. What synchronicity?
That's so cool. I love when those things happen. It doesn't happen that often.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, it was this very fortuitous thing to be at a company, and kind of the reason I was at College Humor was because of this career trajectory that had gone through UCB, which is a big feeder system for a lot of comedy media companies. And, to get there and then have them be like, it's very funny. I think back when I was a kid and my, mom saying an encouraging thing about D&D, where she was like, the best thing, Bren, is you'll be able to apply these skills to whatever you end up doing professionally.
She said
and
that?
then yeah, she was like, but of course the implication there is like, dungeon mastering, it's improv and it's creativity and it's leadership and you're doing all the, whatever you do end up doing, not D&D,
Right.
will benefit from this. Check it out, Mom. Very little lost in translation. Almost exactly the skill set.
Wow.
Right.
Your mom was a trendsetter, though.
I
Like that was
know.
not really the case in the early 90s.
I'm impressed that like did she play D&D? Because like for her to know and understand all of those tenets of the game and how like they help people. Like that's actually a fact.
And those are our talking points now.
Yes. Does your mom need a job?
Can we hire her?
Yeah.
Please.
Well as,
You truly should. My mom's name is Elaine Lee, and she's the coolest. She's a comic book writer. She wrote a series of.
Mom's writing comic books. That's just crazy.
You just killed Shelly.
I have an extremely dope mom. Her name's Elaine Lee. She wrote a series of graphic novels called Starstruck and a bunch of other titles. And when I was 10 years old, she basically, in the way that a lot of good parents do, where, I had had a hard time in school. There was a big problem getting bullied. And she was like, I got this, nerdy kid who I'm trying to find something for. And she, of course, had known a bunch of D&D players. She'd been in like the comic book convention spaces for a long time. And she put up a little, flyer in our local game store. Shout out to LGS's. And it was in New Paltz, New York.
Oh, I almost went to school there.
Oh, really? SUNY New Paltz,
Yes.
big old college town, right? SUNY New Paltz is great.
Yeah.
I'm a SUNY Ulster alum myself, which is a little bit down the road. And found me a game when I was 10 years old with some people that were already playing that were a little bit older. They were kind enough to like take a kid under their wing and teach me how to play the game. And then after a little while there, I was like, I think I could teach my little 10-year-old friends how to do this. And we were off to the races, but it was, all props to Mom. She was the one who was like,
nice.
I think this game would be good for you. And this is second edition. This is back in
THAC0.
Yeah.
THAC0, baby, to hit armor class 0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
shout out to deeply non-intuitive systems.
Negatives are good, right?
Negatives are good. You want to have a weird grid that you have to slide along to be able to, a little prefab thing to figure out if you hit or not.
Yeah, shout out to your mom too. Like, way to go, Elaine Lee, for being prescient enough to see the benefits that a game like this could have for a child. I mean, it wasn't that far out from, the 2020 story in the 80s about how it was, causing this moral panic.
Oh, for sure. Well, my mom, had been involved in like cool Celtic scholarhood, neo-pagan circles for a while. She knew. My mom was about as far from, Chick tracts and the Satanic Panic as you could possibly be. She was like, I think growing up, I had a big book that was right at eye level for little Brennan that was like right next to the Carmina Gadelica, which is like old Irish Celtic prayer songs. There was also a thing called the Glossary of Fallen Angels. So we were
Nice.
We were right in the money. And
you were the target audience. Is that what you're trying to say?
Oh yeah, I'm the full demographic. But we were just voracious. My brothers and I were just voracious for this game. Both, we started designing our own settings right away. But this was also the time period where Planescape was huge. The Dieter Lizzie box sets for Planescape.
So beautiful.
Some deep cut stuff. But oh man, did Planescape just light a fire in our brain. This idea of like adventures in the outer planes and D&D's cosmology. Man, we played so much Planescape.
That's so cool. Yeah, and then especially if you're in that, that vein of talking about theology and moral philosophy and what that means, just being an embodiment in those planes. I think so many people just really latch on to that and inspired people decades to come.
Oh my God. I mean, I was at SUNY Ulster, I was like a philosophy humanities major. Like, so to me, the idea of playing, this like the outer wheel and having this deep exploration of alignment and like ethics made physical through the petitioners and beings of the outer planes. I could wax philosophical about how cool Planescape is all day, every day. a deeply exciting setting.
So let's do that. No, let's just. We're going to be promoting an out of print.
Different podcast.
Yeah,
Different podcast.
We'll lean into it for sure. But I have a confession to make to you, and that is when I started hearing about Dimension 20, I, for some reason, assumed that it was using a different role-playing game system because the visual look was so different from what Dungeons & Dragons was doing at the time. And the themes and things that were going on, it seemed in Dimension 20 just seemed like, oh, he was using like Fate Core or something like that. I just kind of assumed. So I didn't latch onto it like so many people were telling me to, because I was like, oh, okay, well, that's up to those systems to talk to Brennan about. And then I found out you've been using 5th edition this whole time, and I am sorry for that, for
The oversight.
for never going that extra step and jumping into it, because so many people, I know, right? I'm going to. And so for folks who may not know about what makes Dimension 20 unique, what is it that you think that sets it apart so much so that it looks so different from an outsider?
So for people that are watching this who are like, who the hell is this guy? What is Dimension 20? Dimension 20 is an anthology actual play series where we have our awesome core cast, which is Brian Murphy, and it's a bunch of college humor people. It's Brian Murphy and Emily Axford that you guys would know from NADPod, not another D&D podcast. Siobhan Thompson, Zach Oyama, Allie Beardsley, and Lou Wilson, who are our core cast. We've shot 3 seasons. The 3rd season we shot with them hasn't been released yet, but the first 2, the very first season we released is called Dimension 20 Fantasy High. And basically, it's set at a place called the Egg Fort Adventuring Academy. And the whole thing is it's a high school breakfast club meets high fantasy. So you have the half-elven fighter who's like the jock. You've got the prep school elven wizard. You've got the punk rock bad girl tiefling bard with the bass guitar. All these like high school. It's all of our like 1980s John Hughes-esque high school world mashup with high fantasy D&D adventuring. So, there's like a fight in the cafeteria against a creamed corn ooze. There's there's like a house party fight. There's a fight at a I don't want to give any spoilers, but basically it is 5th edition D&D, but played in this world that's a lot like, Evanston, Illinois, circa mid-1980s, right? And the next season we did, that I'm wearing the shirt for right now, is called The Unsleeping City, which is basically like a secret hidden world of magic in New York. So we have the group's paladin is a New York City firefighter with a magical axe. There's a Broadway diva who's a College of Lore bard who's like an Elaine Stritch. Nice. And then we've done a bunch of fun side quests where we have guest players. So we did a thing called Escape from the Blood Keep that had our guest players were Matt Mercer, Erica Ishii, Amy Vorpal, Ife Wadiwe, and then we had Rekha Shankar and Mike Trapp from CollegeHumor playing. And Escape from the Blood Keep it's set in a very Middle Earth type world right after the One Crown has been destroyed. And basically it's all the bad guys being like, we're about to win. And then all their shit blows up and they go, oh God, what do we do?
Now what?
Now what? So it's a very funny parody of like what a bunch of high level bad guys do right at the moment that they've lost. And then we're doing a side quest right now with the McElroys called Tiny Heist, which is a mashup of like a Borrowers-esque, Bugs Life-esque tiny world in the backyard meets Ocean's 11. So it's like a gritty heist movie with tiny little 1-inch people. And in all of these worlds, we're using 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons as the system. And it's the most fun in the world. The big thing I would say about Dimension 20, I know I've been rattling off all these campaign worlds that we're in, but we do, our longest campaigns are like 17 episodes, about 2 hours an episode. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about 30 to 34 hour long story arcs that are very satisfying, but very contained. And this idea of taking D&D and being like, what are all the different worlds we can visit and use this system to bring to life?
That's cool. That's cool because it's like this different. I mean, most people when we play Dungeons and Dragons, you're in the fantasy realm and you stay there. And you have done this, you know, with all these concepts, you know, mashing up more pop culture-y type things and setting it in not necessarily our world, but closer to our world than most D&D games are played. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm like, oh, that's not us. But then now I'm like, oh gosh, now it opens up the doors to so many other different fun stories that folks can play that doesn't need to have like modern D20 kind of rules to it. You can still make it more fantasy.
Yeah. That has been really fun for us to explore. And there are a lot of very smart people who articulate very well online, you know, the sort of strengths of different systems to tell different kind of stories. And I would never disagree with the kind of philosophical point that a lot of those people are trying to make. And obviously D&D has a tremendous amount of lore set in high fantasy worlds, but I've been playing D&D for a long time, and D&D does have some flex in the genres it can create. Ravenloft is gothic horror. Dark Sun, you know, you have Athos, which is like a very apocalyptic desert, almost like a kind of fantasy Mad Max kind of world, right? Yeah. There's a lot of give, and I think I have taken a very different perspective on what D&D is able to do. Some people look at D&D and say, this is for high fantasy gaming. That's what it's built to do. As someone who loves this game with all my heart and has been playing it for a long, long time, my take is very different. I look at the mechanics of the game. You look at Paladin and Cleric and Wizard and all that stuff, and you go, these are great, intuitive. It's an incredibly designed game. It's really fun. And how much of the mechanics actually depend on a given flavor? Because I'm pretty sure you can play a wizard and a paladin in New York City. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you can. Yeah. And if you do, it just creates a really fun flavor for that world and that game. So, you know, that's been my philosophy going into these different seasons. And, you know, the magic continues even if the genre changes.
I gotta say, I'm kind of obsessed with playing in New York City. I really love that. Like the wheels are turning here. Like, but I'm curious, like when you're designing this world or creating this world, like what the difference is for you, because you've created many just pure fantasy worlds versus creating a fantasy world that's based on a real world. Like how much of the real world elements do you pull in, and like, is there a balance, and how do you do that?
So one of the things we wanted to do with Unsleeping City was I didn't want it to be a sort of like alternate universe New York too much. I didn't want a New York with like elves and orcs and dwarves and stuff in it, where it's almost like we're just calling it New York, but really it's more like Waterdeep or something else, right? So with this one, I was like, okay, it's got to be New York. And immediately I started gravitating towards things like Men in Black or Harry Potter or Hellboy, things where a lot of the magical world is actively trying to conceal itself from regular people,
or
right?
Fables is another good example.
Fables is a great example, right? And so I went, and immediately, because I am a New Yorker, I was like, well, that's easy because New Yorkers famously don't notice when crazy stuff is going on around them. And so we created this thing called the Umbral Arcana, which is managed by a group of wizards called the Gramercy Occult Society, which literally is, within the bounds of New York, they create this abjurative field of magic, which is that people not inducted into the Unsleeping City, into that like hidden world of magic, when they see crazy magic stuff happening, their brain just explains it away. It's this ambient enchantment effect where if they see a bunch of rat mutants jump out of the sewer and have a magic fight with one of the defenders of New York City, they're like, oh man, I saw these crazy guys yelling at this person on Fifth Avenue. It was nuts. Like their brain just rewrites it differently because of this thing called the Umbral Arcana.
And because New Yorkers never want to get involved in any of those fights, they would immediately just be like, oh, just not walking this way.
Walking this way, I don't want
How many times have you walked onto a subway where there's a subway car where there's nobody on it except for one person, and then you walk on and then you're like, oh, there's a reason there's no one on this car. I'm going to walk away. That's
Exactly.
a wizard. That was a wizard on that card.
That was a wizard, exactly. The big first fight we have in the Unsleeping City is I don't know if you guys are familiar with SantaCon.
Yeah.
SantaCon is every New Yorker's worst nightmare.
Especially in the food industry.
Especially in the food industry. I worked as a bartender for many years. It's a nightmare. You're taking all of the drunkest, loudest people from Hoboken and Long Island, and they flood into the city and get just rip-roaring drunk. And then they're all dressed as Santa, so they're perfectly anonymous. There's no accountability. They're just running roughshod to the city. And in the Unsleeping City, what we said is, so that's what normal people see. What's really happening is Santa Claus, the real Santa Claus who's real, in order to get to all those houses in one night, has to clone himself millions of times.
Oh, yeah.
And just statistically, some of those clones are going to come out a little wonky. So what he does is, because of the Umbral Arcana, he just dumps the scariest mutant clones of himself off in New York, and then the Guardians of New York are dispatched to fight these mutant Santa clones. And to the waking world, it seems like a pub crawl, but really it is a once-a-year mutant attack of these defective Santa clones.
Oh my God!
How do you explain Fleet Week?
See, this is the kind of lore building that we would, if I was going to do a source book, we would like blow this all out and expand this.
Right.
It's so fun. But yeah, it's
So one question to respond to that. So the Gramercy thing, is set in Gramercy Park? Because I always thought that area of New York City, nobody knows about it. It's this weird little rich, arty, theatery kind of haven in the middle of, near Union Square that I felt inspired by. So is that from you?
Yes, 100%. So the Gramercy Occult Society is very much that idea of like, ooh, there's this weird park you need a key for.
Yes.
It's like very secret occult thing. So it started there. And then they have chantries throughout New York. So they have one in Clinton Hill. They have the New York Public Library is a big headquarters for these wizards. And the two lions at the outside are, of course, like animated stone guardians that guard the library.
Cool.
There's inspiration everywhere. It's amazing. I love it.
I'm so glad. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. And a lot of it is looking at these places that are, finding setting elements that are different keys into getting into D&D world building, right? To go why can't New York be as magical as, Faerun and Greyhawk and everything else? Like, let's, why can't the Bethesda Fountain Angel come to life? Or why can't Pizza Rat show up in the middle of a subway fight and cast a little bit of rat magic? Like, let's
I feel like I've
why
seen
not?
that.
Is Zardulu a character? I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm sure you're inspiring tons of listeners right now to, if they haven't already, to jump in and start paying attention to Dimension 20 for all these reasons. But you are in a time right now at College Humor where there's some flux and some change happening. Is Dimension 20 still there?
Yes. So College Humor has been through a really rocky period in this last week. We had a huge round of layoffs this last week, primarily because our former owner, IAC, wanted to sell the company. And, so we basically had IAC cut us loose, and we lost a lot of funding, and it's a very sad thing. 100 plus of my good friends and really great people in media and comedy are now cut, from the company, which is also an opportunity for anyone listening to this. If you own or work at a media company, please go and share hireacollegehumor.com. It's a website. Some of our tech people, Andy Ng and Andrew Bridgman, spent time creating this website. The cast and crew of College Humor are the kindest, hardest working, funniest people in the world. And they are, looking for work right now. And truly, this is like the most incredible opportunity for anyone that works at a media company to snatch up some of the best, funniest, hardest working, producers, social media people, cast members, writers, performers. This, huge glut of talent is now available both in Los Angeles and New York. So please check out hireacollegehumor.com.
Just to be clear, that's hire a college humorer?
Yes.
Okay.
Hireacollegehumorer.com.
Okay.
A
a lot of ers in there, so I want to make sure everybody gets it.
A lot of ers.
Right.
Yes.
That's. I mean, it's such a sad thing. I remember hearing about it at the same time that everybody else did, and just be heartbroken for this. What I always thought of College Humor as this like kind of hotbed of talent, where there was just so many people creating amazing and funny things that didn't, I think even as close as 10 years ago, no one had like this freedom to create the way that College Humor had been run in the past and created all this amazing stuff.
I mean, absolutely. College Humor, the amount of freedom of expression afforded to the different creators that worked at College Humor is second to none. And for the time that we were all there, what we were able to create, I think, is astonishing. And, I don't claim to be a business person. I'm not an executive. I can't speak to how or why these decisions got made. But as a creative person and a creator, I defy anyone to look at Dropout or the work that was happening on College Humor and say this is not some of the most exciting, original sketch, and then comedy, unscripted, all the stuff we were doing, content. I started working at College Humor writing questions for Actually, which is Mike Trapp's show. You look at Total Forgiveness, you look at Kingpin Katie, you look at Paranoia or WTF 101. The shows that we were making there were every time one of my coworkers released a new project, I was like proud and excited to be able to share it with people. And I am very fortunate that Dimension 20 is going to be able to continue, that I am one of a small handful of people that will be staying on with Dropout and continuing to create content there. And but at the end of the day, like I would blindfold myself and throw a dart at a wall with all the shows that were made there and hit something incredible. You couldn't not, right?
Yeah.
All of
a lot of opportunity there, right? Like I think, as you said, like there's so much talent that is when they were free to create content. Now they're free to create content for anybody out there who can create stuff, whether it be D&D live play shows. I mean, that's something that could be a real simple thing, or all the other fun sketch and comedy that was coming out of there to add that type of flavor to even stuff that doesn't necessarily have a comedy bent to it. There's all that production experience. There's the social media experience, as you mentioned. Like there's just this wealth of people who have been producing stuff and making things forever. And it's sad to see so many of them lose their income and their health insurance and all that stuff. I mean, I'm sure many of them have families. So, there's a lot of upside to bringing these people on right now.
You're describing something that's very real, which is this schism that I have in my head as well, which is like, on the one hand, this is tremendously sad, and you never want anyone to have a sudden jarring interruption in their employment. And it's like you're saying, like, because healthcare is tied to employment, most places in this country, then you find yourself like suddenly having your ability to see a doctor interrupted by a change in employment. So it's incredibly sad. And like, if I could do anything to have made that not happen, I would. But there's a schism there, because the other side is, I have nothing but faith in the people that I worked with. And they're all so talented, so hardworking, so funny, so good. I mean, College Humor, the past 2 years that I was working there, you couldn't find a not nice person. Every single person was a golden-hearted individual that you'd be happy to be in the trenches with. So the schism is the deep sadness on one hand, and then also just this unshakable faith where I'm like, in two years, y'all are going to have Emmys. You're all going to have your own shows. You'll be staff writing on stuff. I'm just like, I have unshakable faith.
Why stop at Emmy? We'll go right to EGOT. They're going to have all
honestly, I look at like Mike Trapp and Rekha Shankar and the cast members I worked with, and I'm like, I don't doubt it. Like they're the most talented people in the world. And, I am so sad for them, and then in the same other, the other hand, am like so certain of their success and their talent.
It may not feel like it right now for them, but
Right.
I can add a little bit of a personal touch. I was laid off from my last job and was at a media company. It had a very similar kind of thing happen where I was completely devastated. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then less than 3 months later, I was working here, and it ended up being this great opportunity. I had to move my family across the country and all the hardship that goes with that. But I don't think one would have happened without the other. And it's really difficult to kind of see through the tunnel and get there. But there is also so much things that in your life can be these very negative things, but could be catalysts for change and growth that you didn't even realize.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah. It's not to diminish by any means what your coworkers are going through right now, but it's also hard to be the person who's left with the job. I mean, like, there is a little bit of, it's hard, it's sad, you feel guilty, it's survivor's guilt, but
I obviously my deepest emotional sympathies are with all the people that are like out looking for work right now. But I do have enough presence of mind to also be very grateful to, all the fans of Dimension 20, whoever makes these decisions, the people that are in charge, they, the only reason I didn't walk out the door with all my friends is because of, Dimension 20 and the fans of the show, and someone looked at the books and made a decision that I would get to stay. And I find that on a personal level baffling because I've all of my peers that are gone are and I'm just being honest, the funniest, most talented people in the world. So the only in terms of that survivor's guilt, the only reason I'm still here has nothing to do with me and has to do with the fans of the show and the fact that Dimension 20 has a very loyal following. So
That's
to
fantastic,
to all the fans of the show, thank you more than I can say, because you're the reason I'm I'm still here and I'm like able to keep doing this.
I mean, I want to take some credit too, because it's Dungeons and Dragons that has allowed you to create this show and have those fans. And no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I'm going to call my lawyer real quick. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to get this.
No, I'm completely joking there, but I think in some ways, I think there's like I said, a lot of opportunity for folks who are creators and things out there to tap into the type of community building that comes with a live play show. It doesn't have to be Dungeons & Dragons or anything like that, but just that feeling of having this shared storytelling, that you're making the show together. You're not necessarily talking at people. I think there is a lot of growth happening in there. We've seen from the last 5 years about how live streaming of D&D play and even this very podcast about how people are getting more and more attention and people going on it because of this upswell of wanting to be a part of something. And I think media is going to shift towards more in that way. So if you're a creator that's out there, even if it has nothing to do with gaming or Dungeons and Dragons, involve your community in everything you're doing for the very reasons that Dimension 20 is still going to be producing stuff.
I mean, 100%. And first of all, the amount of gratitude I feel towards Dungeons and Dragons, all bits aside, is tremendous. Like, if someone phrased a question to me the other day about like, what do you think you would have done with your life if you hadn't started playing D&D when you were 10? And it's a pointless question, because with this many years and this much love for this game, it's so in my DNA that there's no, I don't know who I would be if I hadn't played this game.
It's like, what would you do if there were no books? I
don't know. I don't have the ability to fathom what that would mean. But even if I had never become a professional dungeon master, doing an actual play show, I would still owe everything to D&D. and in terms of just the hours of enjoyment, I've been playing a home game with my friends. We're going on, well, it'll be 11 years in June we've been playing.
Really?
And
These are the same crew that you started with?
Same crew I started with. We started playing 11 years ago. We are still in 3.5. We didn't move to 5e. So we're still playing 3.5. They just got to 18th level.
Oh, wow.
And we slowed down the rate of play because 3 of us live in Los Angeles, 3 of us live in New York, 1 lives in Chicago, because we all were moving in our lives. And now we like play during the holidays, or we like, sometimes we'll just like fly all to play for a full weekend together.
Oh, nice.
So like some of my deepest and most profound like the value that D&D brings to my life, even outside of it being a job that I do, is all like my deepest and most profound friendships and my sense of self and identity. The amount of lessons I've learned from playing D&D on a philosophical, internal, emotional, ethical level is staggering. Truly, you couldn't separate it. And to loop it back around to what you were saying, Greg, like there is a love for this game and for content about this game. I think because there is a hunger for like authenticity, and there's a hunger for like, bizarrely, this like fantasy role-playing game puts you in situations where you and your friends are around a table, either digitally or in person, creating a story that belongs solely to you and your friends. And at the end of the day, you walk away with these authentic experiences and memories that come from you and the people you love telling a story together. And it's intoxicating. It's so cool to watch the world catch wise to a thing I've known since I was 10 years old. You know what I mean? Like just, the perfect storm of the actual play shows that became popular, a really incredible redesign of the game that I think in 5e made the game so accessible and just easy to put into your hand and start. I think just a moment in culture that like exploded around D&D coming into this huge renaissance that it's been having. And it's the coolest and most exciting thing in the world for people to realize how dope this game has always been.
And it's all because of your mom, because of Elaine Lee.
Yeah, Elaine Lee.
Right? Like
early adapter.
that's what's so funny about everything that you're saying is that she saw that somehow.
She needs to do a TED Talk.
She really should.
For other moms.
Yeah.
About why their kids should all be playing D&D.
I'll do that. I'll support that.
Yes.
I'll give all of the
We
money
need
to make that happen.
Yes.
No, because you're right. I mean,
100%.
it's something that I've experienced when going to HasCon, which was an event that our parent company ran in Rhode Island 3 years ago. That I was, obviously a little bit nervous because I was a kid coming up from the moral panic, and there were gonna be a lot of kids there with parents. And I was from the Northeast. I was from Connecticut, so I had a lot more. I knew more how puritanical New Englanders can be, a little bit more so than other regions of the country. But I was so pleasantly surprised at how many. Once I explained what the game was, because many of the parents and the moms were ignorant of exactly what it was. They knew D&D, they knew the brand, but they didn't know how to play. And I explained it in a way, that enlightened them really quickly. And then their eyes just went like bug wide, and were like, "Well, how can I get my kid to do this? Mm-hmm. How do I get them into it so that they're going to be playing and talking to each other, and pretending and coming up with stories? Like that's great."
I had this conversation with a mom in my neighborhood last night because I was baking. I was getting some stuff ready. We're playing D&D tonight, so I was prepping, and she's like, "Why are you making all these cookies?" And I'm like, "I'm having game night tomorrow." And she was like, "What are you playing?" And I said, "Dungeons and Dragons." And she was like, "Oh, really? Interesting." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Soon I'm going to learn how to be a dungeon master, and I'm going to bring all the kids in the neighborhood, and we're going to play."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, take my kid, sure, whatever." But I launched into the whole but it's really good for them. Like, here's all the reasons why it's not just a game, but look at all these things that they're gonna learn from, and they're not even gonna realize they're learning it. But you've also touched on something huge, Brennan, which is the friendships. Mm-hmm. And knowing I know so many people that grew up playing D&D and they're still friends with these people, and it's hard when you're moving around a lot, and you've got family and you've got jobs and stuff, and it's hard to maintain friendships especially when you don't live in the same place. But there's that bond of D&D that people, they just don't forget, and it keeps you together.
Yeah.
And I want that. I want that for my kid.
Everybody does. Everybody wants that. I want that now. I want to, make new friends and have better friends now. And I think that's another good thing that D&D does, is for not only just for kids, but for
adults too. Yeah.
No, not many. I mean, I was 30 something in New York, and it was very hard to meet new friends unless we had this, like, we're going to play a game together, guys. Yeah. And then, we shared so much more beyond the game that I don't think I would have if we weren't meeting each on a weekly basis around a table.
Well, that's the thing too, is I'm the most guilty of that. People sometimes ask me, because it's very funny. People will go like, well, now that you do D&D for your job, are you like losing some of the magic? Right. Is it going away?
It's like working in an ice cream parlor and you're like, I hate ice cream now.
I hate ice cream now. I always feel a little embarrassed about giving the real answer, which,
no.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because the real answer is that I want, when someone's like, is it getting like, you're overdone, you're done with it? Because the real answer, that if I was being honest, is I would be like, honestly, I'm bummed out that we're not playing D&D right now.
Why are you asking me this stupid question?
Why are you asking me this stupid question? I'm like, honestly, if we were shooting a sketch, I would have a camera on them asking that question, and then cut to me just making a character for myself to play, like rolling stats.
Like, what? I'm sorry, what did you
right
say?
Now.
What'd you say? Well, because that's the thing, is it's the perfect, the pitch I always give people that have never played D&D before, because that's my favorite thing, is to bring new people into the game, right? Pitch I always give people when they really have no frame of reference for what it is I go, D&D's three things, okay? You and your friends telling a story together, plus gambling about what's gonna happen in the story, plus hanging out and having a good time. Those three things, right? Storytelling, plus a mechanical game element that creates tension and risk, plus you and your best friends getting to know each other. And, the part of me that also was like an improv teacher for many years loves to say, you never get to know people better than when you're playing with them. Like, the amount of insight I have into because obviously, like, you spend quality time with people talking, you get to know them, but I feel like you also get to know your friends from seeing them make up people to be, and the decisions they make there, in a really gratifying way. So, to me, it is the perfect activity, right?
Yeah. And in contrast, I mean, you're talking about if you get old with, if it doesn't ever get old for you. I was a game journalist, a video game journalist for a long time. And that was the job that I got laid off from. And it that did happen to me, where I was like, oh gosh, video games. I don't know if I mean, if you have to like do a review for a huge RPG, you're talking about 80 hours of time that you got to spend above and beyond the 9 to 5 that you're doing at the job anyway. And I did get burned out, and I still to this day I still play a lot of video games, but there's definitely a point where I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I want to spend time passively looking at a screen. And I didn't ever have found that for Dungeons and Dragons. I've never had that moment of, I don't want to spend more time doing this or reading about it or proselytizing about it here on podcasts and things like that, because it is something that doesn't feel. It feels like I'm telling people a way to make their lives better.
Yeah.
And I never felt that way about video games, or I didn't have as strong a feeling about it after 5 years of doing it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the incredible thing too about the game, is it, by definition, you're gonna have a unique experience, because no group of people, it's a snowflake, this group of people on this night in this place with this set of circumstances are going to create something that's never been created before, right? And the experience you're going to have is going to be totally unique. And Emily Axford said it in a great way. She was talking about, she was like, the memories I make from playing D&D don't feel different than the memories you make in real life, which if you read about psychology and the way the brain works, we don't have two different centers in our brain for processing visual information and for visual imagination. It's the same part of your brain. The part that your mind's eye and your eyes go to the same place, right? So when you create these fantastical memories, there is a part of me that believes how could you not become a better person from making these heroic decisions, even if it's fictional? you're still putting yourself through the emotional experience of being a hero. In my long, like 10-year home game, 3 years into it, we had a PC death, which is always a very intense experience when you play a game, right? And one of my, my close friends, one of them needed to hit a nat 20. They were fighting an enemy way outside of their they were punching way above their weight, right? And it was like, if you hit this nat 20, you can save your friend. And my friend rolled a 19. Heartbreak. Look, you guys are like groaning because it's so real. The stories are so real. Cut to 4 years of real time later. We've all like aged 4 years. All the characters are high level now, and they go on an adventure in the ring of death in this like underworld, right? And who do they come across but their friend who they couldn't save? And we were playing the day after Christmas, sitting on the floor in my parents' house in upstate New York. And I'm sitting there, and my friend Nick, who plays the paladin of the group, and my friend Jack, who plays this lion folk monk warrior who died, are walking on this bridge over void in death. And my friend Nick looks to Jack, and after 4 years of not really being able to say it in character, looks over and just goes, "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." And starts crying in real life, like tears.
I might start crying in real life. This is really touching.
It's really touching. And this like spirit, this ghost, wraith of his friend, like puts an arm on his shoulder and goes like, "It's not your fault." And
forgive.
And then gives him a hug, and then
gives him a big hug.
It's
They
like Robin
embrace.
Williams and Matt Damon, like it's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
Oh my God.
You're just saying, all of us are just in tears, and we all look around, and then like a minute later, it's like, "Okay, do you guys want to order pizza?"
Can I have a cigarette? Oh God,
a cigarette. Like it's this, but like I don't. There's the line Dumbledore says in the final book of Harry Potter, where Harry Potter goes like, "Is this real?" Or something like that. And Dumbledore says that I'm doing a horrible job paraphrasing here. He basically says Harry Potter says, "Is this in my head or is it real?" And Dumbledore goes like, "Well, yes, it's in your head, but why should that mean it's not real?"
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of catharsis and growth and from those moments, like some of my most important memories are from moments where we were being people other than ourselves. And I think that's the most beautiful thing that this game has to offer.
I'm going to go have a good cry.
I feel like you also need to do a TED Talk.
I love everything you're saying.
I do
think
too.
It is absolutely what the core of this game is for so many different people, and it doesn't matter what edition it is or even what specific rule set you're using. Like there is something really that cuts to the deepness of what humanity is that brings these emotions forward in ways that I don't think necessarily people are comfortable with. Especially adult males out there. You don't. I don't think I've heard another story that was not involving D&D where grown adults were around a table crying about something sweet that happened between two of them, right?
Absolutely,
and that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that catharsis and finding that softness there, and it's really I don't know how to describe it other than like, because it's so funny because you have this game and you open the rule books and it's like, okay, here's a knoll, here's a beholder, here's Melf's acid arrow. And you look at those and then you hold those books up and you're like, within this is the secret to stories and moments of emotion and heartbreak. And you're like, the book that has Melf's acid arrow in it is the book that's going to break my heart. And I'm like, dude, yes.
Well,
yeah.
There's another layer to Melf too. Do you know that Melf is Luke Gygax's character, the son of Gary Gygax? His character was Melf, and he created that spell with his dad. And that spell has come and been in every edition. And to hear Luke tell about it, I also had a tear in my eye when he's talking about it, because I'm like, it's not just a silly spell that does acid damage.
Yeah.
It's got family about it. It's got this amazing storiness to it. So
much. That's so great. Yeah, you can't get away from it.
No, even in an example like that. So
The heart is there, man. The heart is there. It's so good.
I love it. Well, thank you. And you're. I mean, that whole Dumbledore quote is also top of mind for me, based on your discussions too about how you're creating these fantasy stories that are just like a layer beneath our world. And I think it's a really great area to continue to explore. And I'm really thankful that Dimension 20 is able to continue to explore that. And I want more people to. And thank you for telling these stories for as many years as you have.
It's such a pleasure and an honor to be on the show, gang. I cannot. It is so cool to come on your guys' podcast and be talking with Dungeons and Dragons, like the institution itself, and stepping out and kind of just being this guy. I'm just some dude who's been playing this game for a long time, and coming to the official institution and being like, I think this game is really about like friendship and heart, and to have official confirmation of like, yes, as a representative of the institution. Yes. And I'm like, oh my God, it means so much. So thank you very, very much for having me on.
You're the best.
Yeah, you really are.
Yeah.
People do. People love you. A lot of people
kind.
were really excited when they found out you were going to be on the show. And I'm going to speak for Greg here too. But I think we love you a lot too. Like a lot.
I love
like more than I even thought was possible.
That means the world. I can't. I'm getting very emotional. I love you guys both very, very much. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're the best. Just before we let you go, what's the best way if people want to listen to this and want to find out how to find out what you're doing, especially about Dimension 20? Where's the best location?
Awesome. For me personally, you can find me on Twitter at BrennanLM. That's BrennanLM. You can find me on Instagram at Brennan Lee Mulligan. You can follow Dimension 20 Show at Dimension 20 Show on Twitter. Our Twitch live show, The Continuing Adventures of Fantasy High, the young teen heroes of Dagford Adventuring Academy, that's on twitch.tv/dropoutlive every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. So if you're a Twitch person, you can find us there. If you want to get a taste of some of our free stuff we've put up, you go to Dimension 20, our YouTube channel. You can watch Fantasy High, the whole first season's up there. If you want to watch the rest of it, just go to dropout.tv and you can sign up for Dropout. That's where Tiny Heist is coming out right now on Thursdays. That's where all our whole catalog of adventures are there, and that's where you can find us and check out what we're doing.
Fantastic. I love all of it. And of course, if you're looking for any humorer, go to hireacollegehumorer.com and find out how to get some of the amazing folks who are at College Humor on your teams, and make sure that they have this emotional moment just like we just had.
Yeah.
They need to start playing D&D if they aren't already.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get a huge D&D game with all of them. Combat will be a slog. 100 people in combat is going to be a slog, but we're going to do it.
No combat. We'll just hug it
have a
out.
lot of
We'll
guest
hug it out
stars.
every single time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Brennan. Take it easy.
Thanks, Brennan.
Take care. Thank you so much, gang. Take care.
All right.